You are the angels. In October conference, Elder Carlos de Goy entitled his talk, I Believe in Angels, and said the following: The Lord is aware of the challenges that you face. He knows you. He cares about you. And I promise He will send angels to help you. As I listened to that promise, I wondered about the angels the Lord might send to help me in my life. Perhaps my grandparents, my deceased parents, my husband who had passed away 13 years ago. I have sometimes prayed to Heavenly Father, asking Him to send those very people to help my children, but I haven't recognized them being here. As I listened further to Elder Godoy's talk, I realized that he wasn't talking about the angels that Elijah saw outside his tent or angels from across the veil. He was actually talking about the angels that live in bodies of flesh and bone, those angels that walk among us in our everyday lives. His talk got me to thinking about the angels in my life, the angels I see every day, those people who radiate the Lord's love and help me through my earth life. We all have these angels. Some of them are immediately recognizable in answer to a prayer or when we're feeling down. But others of those angels are not so recognizable until we look back and realize that the Lord had a hand in helping us with the people that He knew would listen. I'd like to share a few of the most memorable angels that have helped me through life. As a young girl, our family lived on a ranch outside of town. It was quite primitive with no running water or electricity. Although I didn't realize it at the time, we were probably poor, and I went to school most days looking a little unkempt. In the beginning, when we first moved to Overton, I had absolutely no friends, and none of the girls would really play with me or befriend me. My third grade teacher, Mrs. Porter, took me on as a rescue. I realized what an angel she was, looking back. She only called on me in class if she knew I knew the answer. And to my surprise, and I'm sure to the surprise of most of the children in the class, she cast me into the lead part of the Christmas play. Her kindness elevated my standing among my peers, and in January, I started to make some friends. The girls that befriended me were all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I was not. But that didn't matter to them. They dragged me along to primary all of the years that we were in elementary school, and I graduated primary with a bandolo full of medallions. Later, these same angels took me to MIA, or Young Women's now, where I learned more and more about the gospel. Another angel that came into my life during high school was my English teacher. He also happened to be the early morning seminary teacher. One day in class, he invited me to seminary and sweetened the deal with a little bit of extra credit for English. I ended up graduating from high school with a 4-year seminary certificate and a little more knowledge of the gospel. My parents were not interested in the church, even though I had asked them about it, but they weren't opposed to it and allowed me to attend those meetings. But I never joined the church in high school because I felt loyal to my family. Later in college, because of the angels that had surrounded and influenced me during my growing up years, I did eventually join the church and was baptized. I met and married a wonderful man at BYU, and eventually we made a life together. There were many angels along the way. Between the year 1974, when I joined the church, and the year 2000, which I'd like to jump to now. All of those years in between, I had been an active missionary for my parents. I had tried to convert them by sending the missionaries to them, by giving them Book of Mormons, other church books, talking to them about the church. They were always respectful of Jim's and my beliefs, but they never chose to join the LDS Church. In the year 2000, my father passed away, and Jim and I moved from Farron, Utah to St. George to be closer to my mother and brother. We thought they would need our help. They lived in Overton at the time, but we thought that St. George would be close enough that we could get down and help them when they needed it. Less than a year after we moved to St. George, Cronji, my brother, and my mom moved into a house here just a few blocks from our home that Jim had built for them. Neither Mom or Cronji were members of the church, and now, because 30 years had passed away and I had been a failure as a missionary during those 30 years, I had pretty much given up trying to be an active missionary. Jim and I lived with the blessings of the gospel, and Mom and Cronji chose to live as Christians, but without organized religion. We continued to have family activities and enjoy life together for 2 years after we moved to St. George, and then Jim unexpectedly passed away. Enter the angels. One Sunday afternoon, following Sunday dinner with Mother and Cronji, we were sitting around talking at the table when the home teachers came by. These men were literally our angels. After Jim had passed away, his home teaching companion had been assigned to another brother to minister to our family. These two brothers didn't just come once a month with the idle offer, "Call if you need anything." They checked on our family almost weekly. They came in person and often found things to do that I didn't ask them about. They would walk out in the yard and adjust a sprinkler system, or recognize that we needed a doggy door and then show up the next day and install one. They changed the thermostat when the seasons changed. They just found things to help us with. They were on top of our needs. But back to Cronji and my mom. That particular Sunday, the home teachers checked around the yard and then came back in the house to leave us with a message and a prayer. We visited for a minute and then they left. After they did, my mom turned to me and said, "You know, I'd really like some of those men to visit me." I didn't tell her at the time that you only got home teachers if you were a member of the church, but later I approached our bishop and told him what she had said. Although Cronji and Mother weren't members and didn't even live in our ward boundaries, our angel bishop immediately signed them home teachers from our ward. Their home teachers were amazing men. They were handymen and they were missionaries. They faithfully ministered to Cronji and my mom, and along the way spread gospel love. 3 months after my mom was assigned home teachers, my own visiting teachers asked me to lunch at the pizza factory. I had already made plans with my mom to go to lunch that day, so when the visiting teachers asked me to lunch, I asked them if I could bring my mom along. Of course, they said yes. While we enjoyed lunch, we talked about the food and our kids and the growth in St. George and life and the gospel. We were there almost 2 hours. When I dropped my mom back off at her house, she said, "You know, Kathy, I'd sure like some of those ladies to be my teachers." Off to the bishop I went again, and the following week, my mom was assigned 2 visiting teachers. One was a recently returned senior missionary, and the other was the St. George Temple president's wife. Coincidence? These angels befriended my mother. They took her shopping, walking, and to lunch. They introduced her to other older sister missionaries. And then they played games and cleaned the park together and went on drives. They took her shopping. They just invited her into their lives. She started coming with me to church on Sundays. I think it was to see her friends. She would come to sacrament and then follow them into Sunday school and Relief Society, always sitting with them, not me. Then one day, they were out driving, and she told them, "I would like to be a visiting teacher." Off to the bishop I went again because Sister Shar told me what my mom had said. The following Sunday, Bishop Brown interviewed my mom and called her to be a visiting teacher. He assigned Sister Shar, the senior missionary, as her companion, and then he assigned them to visit Sister Dunn, the stake president's wife, Sister Brown, the former bishop's wife, and Sister Jensen from my mother's own ward, who she was already friends with. Although these ladies were together often, they never pushed my mom to join the church. Instead, these angels befriended her, introduced her to other friends, took her into their lives, not just their church-going activities, but into their gardens, their drives, their games, their recipes, their walks, their barbecues, their movies. They loved her as Christ loves her. In 2005, 2 years after she met our family's home teachers on that fateful Sunday after my husband had passed away, my mom invited me to go to lunch at the pizza factory. Over lunch, she said to me, "I love these ladies. They are my friends. I want to have what they have. I want to live like they live. I want to join the church. I want to be baptized." After more than 30 years of trying to bring my mom into the church, it wasn't what I did. It was her ministering angels that surrounded her and showed her what the gospel could do for her life. These same sisters sat with her during the missionary discussions and were there when she entered the waters of baptism. These angels continued to love and support her as she grew in the gospel. And then when she went through the temple at 86, they were by her side. They were her earthly angels at work. That angel story was enough to convince me that the Lord does know us and loves us and will send angels to help us. But the story doesn't end there. When we learned that Mother would need to complete the missionary discussions before she could be baptized, her friends and I invited the sister missionaries to come to her home and teach her. This was before COVID, so they were still coming into people's homes. And on the appointed day, all of her girlfriends, the angels, and I were there waiting for the sister missionaries. When the knock came on the door, I went to answer it. But when I opened the door, it was the elders. Ugh, that's not what we wanted. I turned to my mom to ask her, should we wait? What should we do? And she shrugged and said, "Well, they're here. Let them in." We had originally invited my brother Cronji to listen to the missionary discussions with Mother, but he had declined. The missionaries taught that first discussion, and we all participated. And then following the lesson, my mom and Sister Shar got up to fix the treat that my mom had prepared for everyone. And the rest of us, including her friends, made small talk with the elders while they were fixing the plates. "Where are you from?" "Brazil." "Oh," I piped in, "my husband served in Brazil." "Where in Brazil?" "Oh, you wouldn't have heard of it. It's a small town on the border of Brazil and Argentina by the name of Santa Catarina." At that point, I dropped out of the conversation. I knew I had heard that name before. And then I remembered my husband had talked about Santa Catarina. While we were talking to the missionaries, and when they were talking about having to learn English, my brother came out of his room and began to talk to the missionaries in Spanish. I was able to drop out of the conversation without note, and when I got home, I went straight to my husband's missionary journal. I searched his journal and found the name Santa Catarina. More than 30 years before, as a young missionary in Brazil, he had been assigned to go to that very town, a small town that he said straddled the border between Argentina and Brazil. He and his companion were sent there to find a sister who had immigrated as a member of the church from Germany to Brazil and had been working with people in her town. She had people ready to be baptized, but at the time there were no elders in Santa Catarina, and she had written to church headquarters asking that elders be sent to baptize the people that she had helped convert. Jim and his companion actually found this sweet sister, but wrote back to the mission president that they were now in Argentina because she was living on the other side of the border. The mission president told Jim to stay in Santa Catarina and he would send a companion from the Argentine mission. Jim chronicled in his journal their work in Santa Catarina. Because of this immigrant sister's work among her neighbors, there were enough people ready to join the church that they were able to teach and baptize enough people to form a branch. The following week, I took Jim's missionary journal back to the second discussion with my mom and the ladies and the elders. To make a long story short, the young elder that had knocked on my mother's door from Santa Catarina wrote back to his mother, and we found that she had been baptized over 30 years ago by a young elder from Utah. We don't know for sure that it was Jim, but we do know that 30 years later, the Lord had not forgotten Jim's service and had sent another missionary to teach his mother-in-law the gospel, a young missionary that could connect with Kranji because of the language and because he touched his heart. The missionaries brought my brother into the discussions, challenged him to read the Book of Mormon, and 6 months later, both Kranji and mother were baptized into the gospel. Sisters, the Lord called my husband to teach in Brazil 38 years ago. My husband was an angel to this elder's family. In 2006, this elder was our family's angel, as were the sisters who loved my mom into the gospel. I personally have been the recipient of many earthly angels who have served me. There have been many times when I didn't think I could go on, but I did because friends, ward sisters, angels sent by the Lord helped me through. Sisters, angels are needed right now in your ward, in your neighborhood, in St. George. There are sisters who are out there wondering, should I stay home? Is it worth going to church for just 50 minutes? If I go, will I be accepted? No one really cares if I'm okay. My house is humble, not decorated. No one would want to come visit me. You fill in the next sentence. We all have doubts. Sisters, angels are needed right now. We can be the Lord's ministering angels by reaching out to anyone, especially those in need. We don't have to know why we are sent or what the final outcome will be. We just need to serve. Send a text, call someone, find someone to befriend, maybe just smile. Elder Godoy said this about our service. I believe in angels. We are all here today, a giant army of angels set apart for these latter days to minister to others as extensions of the Lord's loving hand. I promise that if we are willing to serve, the Lord will send us opportunities to be ministering angels. He knows who needs angelic help, and He will put those people in our paths. I pray that all of us will be ready and willing to serve the Lord who puts sisters in our path. They may be the sisters to whom you are assigned to minister. They may be someone that lives by you, or someone you just see, or someone you are prompted to greet. Sisters, be ready, be willing, be an angel sent by the Lord.